When people think about the 1930s in America, many imagine black and white photographs, dusty roads, old wooden houses, and families gathered around a small radio. It may seem like a world so far away that it almost feels like a dream. But behind every faded picture was a real family, a real story, and people who woke up every morning hoping tomorrow would be better than today.
睡饱啦，小懒虫。
It was a time of hardship, courage, kindness, and determination. Even though life was difficult, millions of Americans found ways to smile, to help one another, and to keep moving forward. The 1930s began during one of the hardest times America had ever faced. The stock market had crashed just before the decade began, and the effects spread across the country. Businesses closed their doors. Factories became quiet. Banks failed, and many people lost the money they had worked their whole lives to save. Jobs disappeared almost overnight. Fathers searched from town to town hoping someone would hire them. Mothers stretched every meal as far as possible, making simple ingredients feed an entire family. Children learned very early that every penny mattered. For many families, every day became a lesson in making the most of what they had. Clothes were patched instead of replaced. Shoes were repaired again and again until they could no longer hold together. Nothing was wasted. A piece of string, an old jar, or even a worn blanket could still have another purpose. People became experts at fixing, reusing, and sharing. It wasn't because they wanted to live that way. It was because they had no other choice. Yet even during those difficult days, home remained a place of comfort. Many houses were small, with only a few rooms, but they were filled with love. The kitchen was often the heart of the home. The smell of fresh bread or soup could lift everyone's spirits after a long day. Families gathered around simple wooden tables, thankful for whatever food they had. Mealtime wasn't just about eating. It was about being together. Electricity was still not available in every home, especially in rural areas. Some families used oil lamps after sunset, filling rooms with a soft golden glow. Nights were quieter than they are today. There were no smartphones, no internet, and no streaming videos. Instead, families talked, played cards, read books, or listened carefully to stories on the radio. The radio became the center of entertainment and information. People gathered around it to hear music, comedy shows, baseball games, and important news from across the country. Children found happiness in the simplest things. They built toys from scraps of wood, rolled old tires down dirt roads, climbed trees, skipped stones across rivers, and created games using only their imagination. A stick could become a sword. A cardboard box could become a castle. Summer afternoons seemed endless as children laughed together until the sun disappeared behind the trees. Expensive toys were rare, but creativity was everywhere. School looked very different too. Many children walked long distances to small schoolhouses. Some classrooms had students of many different ages learning together. Teachers worked hard with limited supplies, often buying materials with their own money. Education was deeply valued because families believed learning could open doors to a better future. Even children who had to leave school early to help support their families carried that hope in their hearts. Life in America's countryside had its own challenges. Farmers worked from sunrise until sunset, but nature was not always kind. During the 1930s, large parts of the Great Plains suffered through terrible dust storms in what became known as the Dust Bowl. Years of drought and poor farming practices left the land dry and vulnerable. Powerful winds lifted enormous clouds of dirt into the sky, turning bright afternoons into darkness. Dust entered homes through every crack, covering furniture, food, and even beds. Many farming families watched helplessly as their crops failed year after year. Without healthy crops, there was little money to survive. Thousands packed everything they owned into old trucks or worn-out cars and traveled west, especially toward California, hoping to find work and a fresh start. The journey was long and uncertain. Families slept beside roads, shared meals with strangers, and prayed that opportunity waited somewhere ahead. cities faced different struggles. Long lines formed outside soup kitchens where volunteers served warm meals to hungry people. Bread lines stretched around city blocks as families waited patiently for food. Some people lived in makeshift communities built from scrap wood, metal sheets, and cardboard. These neighborhoods became symbols of difficult times. Yet even there, neighbors often looked after one another, sharing food, blankets, and encouragement whenever possible. Music became a source of hope during these hard years. Jazz continued to fill dance halls, while swing music brought energy and excitement. Even people with little money found ways to enjoy an evening of dancing. For a few hours, worries seemed lighter. Songs reminded people that joy could still exist, even during difficult times. Music gave people something no one could take away: hope. Hollywood also became a place where dreams came alive. Movie theaters offered an escape from everyday struggles. For just a small price, audiences entered beautiful worlds filled with adventure, romance, comedy, and unforgettable characters. Children stared wide-eyed at animated cartoons, while adults forgot their troubles for a little while. The glowing screen reminded everyone that imagination could carry people far beyond the problems waiting outside the theater doors. Sports remained another bright spot. Baseball continued to unite communities. Families gathered around radios to hear exciting games. Local teams brought neighborhoods together, and children dreamed of one day becoming famous athletes. Sports taught lessons of teamwork, perseverance, and fair play, qualities people desperately needed during those uncertain years. Throughout the decade, communities discovered the incredible strength of helping one another. Churches organized food drives. Neighbors shared gardens. Friends exchanged work whenever possible. A family with extra vegetables might trade them for homemade bread. Someone who knew how to repair shoes might fix a neighbor's boots in exchange for firewood. These simple acts of kindness created strong bonds that often lasted for generations. The government also introduced programs designed to help struggling Americans rebuild their lives. New roads, bridges, schools, parks, and public buildings created jobs for millions. Workers planted trees, built hiking trails, and improved communities across the nation. These projects not only provided paychecks but also restored confidence. People once again felt they were contributing to something larger than themselves. Many young men joined work programs that sent them into forests and national parks to plant trees, prevent soil erosion, and improve public lands. They lived in camps, worked hard every day, and sent much of their earnings back home to support their families. Their efforts left a lasting mark on America's natural beauty that can still be seen today. Fashion during the 1930s reflected both practicality and elegance. Everyday clothing was simple and durable because it needed to last. Women often made dresses at home using sewing patterns and affordable fabric. Men carefully maintained their hats, jackets, and polished shoes whenever possible. On special occasions, however, people dressed with pride. Looking neat and presentable became a way of holding on to dignity, no matter how difficult life became. Transportation was changing as well. Automobiles became more common, though many families still could not afford one. Trains remained an important way to travel across the country. The sound of a steam locomotive pulling into a station symbolized movement, opportunity, and new beginnings. For many Americans searching for work, those train tracks represented hope. Technology continued to slowly improve everyday life. Telephones connected more homes. Household appliances gradually became more available, although many families still relied on traditional methods for cooking, cleaning, and preserving food. Innovation never stopped, even during the hardest economic times. One remarkable quality of the people who lived through the 1930s was their resilience. They learned to solve problems with creativity instead of money. They celebrated birthdays with homemade cakes, repaired broken furniture instead of replacing it, and treasured family photographs because memories were among the few things hardship could never steal. Grandparents passed down stories around fireplaces. Parents taught children values that reached far beyond material wealth. Respect, honesty, gratitude, hard work, patience, and generosity became lessons lived every single day. Children who grew up during those years often carried those values throughout their entire lives. Looking back today, it's easy to focus only on the struggles of the 1930s. But that would leave out something just as important. This decade was also filled with laughter echoing from front porches, children racing through open fields, neighbors waving from across the street, families singing together around the radio, and communities standing shoulder to shoulder through every challenge. The people of that era discovered that true wealth was not measured by money alone. It was found in helping hands, shared meals, trusted friends, loving families, and the quiet confidence that difficult seasons never last forever. Every challenge they overcame became part of a larger story of courage that would inspire future generations. As the decade slowly came to an end, America had not solved every problem. Life was still uncertain for many families. But something powerful had changed. People had learned that even the darkest times could not erase compassion, determination, or hope. They had endured storms of dust, years of unemployment, empty pockets, and countless disappointments, yet they continued to believe in tomorrow. Today, when we look at those old photographs, hear the crackle of an antique radio, or watch black and white films from long ago, we are not simply looking at history. We are looking at ordinary people who faced extraordinary challenges with remarkable strength. Their lives remind us that courage often grows in the hardest seasons, that kindness becomes most valuable when little else remains, and that hope has a way of surviving even the darkest nights. The story of American life during the 1930s is not only a story about hardship. It is a story about families who stayed together, neighbors who lifted one another up, children who found joy in simple moments, and communities that refused to give up. Their perseverance became the foundation for a brighter future. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson they left behind. No matter how difficult the road may seem, every sunrise brings another chance to begin again. Every act of kindness plants the seed for a better tomorrow. Every generation has its own challenges, but the human spirit is stronger than fear, stronger than uncertainty, and stronger than any storm. The courage of the 1930s still echoes through history, reminding us that hope never disappears, it simply waits for people brave enough to carry it forward.